in San Francisco, one reason we want to do the book is we have an amazing collection of surviving vintage neon signs. And it's not each individual sign that is so important, but it's that collection all together. You think of New York and Las Vegas and LA as big neon towns. San Francisco has an amazing collection, and when we lose even one sign, then that collection changes. And we feel it's as important as any collection of paintings in any museum in the city. I want to go to the next slide. Let's see if I can do this. Yeah. All right. So this is a postcard of Market Street in the 50s. And this is when neon was an integral part of the most exciting part of this city. And if you wanted to be part of those bright lights that Peggy Lee sang about, you came down to Market Street to one of the movie theaters or the restaurants or the Army-Navy stores. Really, there's just endless amounts of places to get lost. And how does neon affect our city? Well, one thing I just want to point out is it makes it come alive. And when you turn on a neon sign, there's always that Frankenstein feeling of it's alive. And that's because it really, something is being awakened, something is being electrified when those electricity hits those molecules and they ignite. Now, this is the view of Market Street in the 1950s, and prepare to get sad, because that is the only sign left of that entire street that we still have in our collection of neon signs. But the good news is the Oddfellows have just restored this sign. And I think it's actually a great time for the sign to be restored, because those rings at the very top stand for friendship, love, and truth, which we could all use a little more of. Yeah, absolutely. We know that unexpected things happen. We had an election. Really sad things happen and close to home. And so we just want to take a minute and dedicate the event today to a really, really sweet, wonderful, crazy neon fan, Ben Reynolds, who died in the Ghost Ship fire. And he was at our event last year, and we had a chance to meet him. He's got a prolific blog of Oakland neon. So if you visit our Facebook page, I'll be posting about Ben. So we want to really dedicate this show to him and remember him. He was excited by neon, and there's some features about him in the SF Gate, but this is a photo of an Aurora Borealis. And a friend of ours from Austin pointed out that what happens when a neon site is lit is really similar to what happens when the molecules get excited and they emit photons, and there's really nothing like it. And this is what happens in our cities when a neon sign gets re-illuminated. There's really that spark of life and that amazement. And also it just completely, at night, it really changes our city from night to day. It's a real transformation when you're on a street that has a neon sign. Now, if you live in San Francisco, you've probably got a corner market, and this is just an essentially San Francisco thing. And if you're lucky enough for your corner market to have a neon sign, you know that it's the ambient light that just pulls you down the street. And there's no other light like this that can just spill onto the sidewalk and make one block in your neighborhood like the most amazing movie set you've ever seen. And Al took these photos really trying to recreate a cinema scene, and it wasn't hard. And especially when it's raining like it is now, you can see that these signs really just do their job of creating a vibrant scene on the street. And that's why we did the book and why we want to do these events, because we want to keep this scene of our city. And whenever we can see a sign illuminated, we know our city's becoming more vital. And both preserving the past and taking us forward into the future. Are you next?
All right, can I?
Yeah.
All right, we'll talk about some of the signs that we have lost that were very much a part of San Francisco's landscape. For instance, the 17 Reasons Why, the most existential neon sign that maybe ever existed in San Francisco. This sign was on Mission Street. It was on top of the Redlex Furniture Building. And fortunately for us, there is a man named Stephen Parr. I don't know if Stephen is here today, but he has the entire sign, or all of the letters, except for the exclamation point. It's a mystery what's happened to the exclamation point.
Whereabouts unknown.
But the sign is in Stephen's possession. It's scattered throughout his workspace, and we recently ran into a photo archivist who also works with Stephen on some other projects, and he said, "Oh, that thing, I'm always tripping over those letters every time I try to get a book out of the bookcase." But anyway, the sign, so it exists in some form. It's just no longer on top of the Redlex Furniture Building, and it was replaced by a plastic advertisement for Miller Lite beer, which is also since long gone. So,
But the frame is still there, and Stephen has the letters, so
it'll show up somewhere again someday.
there's hope.
And then we had the Planters Peanut Building out on Bayshore. Mr. Peanut was over 30 feet tall. His monocled eye winked. The arrows were flasher that actually pointed towards him. Very elegant sign. Long gone and sadly missed. And then we have maybe everybody's favorite in San Francisco is the Ham's beer sign, which was on the Ham's Brewery on Folsom Street. It was installed in 1954. At the time, it was the largest commercial sign west of Chicago. It was such a big event that they invited the mayor to flip the switch to turn it on the first time. Okay.
Probably get more emails about that sign than any other lost icon.
Even Steel Stadium had its own neon marquees. This is Willie Mays standing in front of one of those signs. The first Major League professional baseball game in San Francisco was played it started in April of 1959. The Giants played the Dodgers. The Giants won 8-0. So we have that. City of Paris, iconic sign on the top of the City of Paris department store in Union Square. The City of Paris was known for its fine French wine and linen collections, among other things. They also had their own boat that brought goods from Paris and docked on the Embarcadero.
Notice Al took that photograph when he first came to be as an art student in the 70s. It was still up.
Yeah.
And even though there was a big campaign to save it, it went to the dustbin of time.
I think in 1983 it was removed. And this is Kearney Street in the early 50s.
57.
57,
Yeah.
late 50s. And if you look close, you'll see a lot of signs, a lot of recognizable signs, a lot of really popular businesses and restaurants here in San Francisco. And we're going to do a close-up and show you. This is a zooming in on some of the signs. You'll see the Sherman Clay piano sign on your left there. Okay. That sign was removed from the Kearney Street location, and it was repaired and restored by a Federal Sign Company in the early 90s. That is, you saw photos of Shauna Peterson doing some tube bending in Avery's presentation. This is a younger Shauna working on the harp, the tubing for the harp in the center of the Sherman Clay sign. This sign, sadly, we lost in last summer, last July, I believe. This sign was removed for a number of different reasons, but unfortunately the sign is gone. And here we have a close-up of the lower part of that photograph of Kearney Street, and you can see there's nothing like a great, elegant neon top hat.
Where is that top hat sign?
And Gene Compton's, we had a number of locations around the city. The Gene Compton's in the Tenderloin was actually the site of a riot between its gay clientele and the San Francisco Police Department that actually was a forerunner to the Stonewall riots in New York City. This is a view of Haight Street. You can see the Haight Theater, which no longer exists, on the farther down on the right on Haight Street. And we did a close-up of the Dr. Zwerling's optometrist. I think this is just a great neon sign. It's a great combination of sign painting on the tin can, which is what the metal base for that sign, in the trade they called them tin cans, and the corresponding symmetry between the glass tube lettering and the painted lettering, and the eyeglasses over the eyes. It's really, really everything you could look for in a neon sign, I think. And then we have Chinatown.
Yeah. All right. So this is one of our favorite tours that we do in Chinatown, and definitely the most popular and the densest concentration of very old signs. I'm always looking for postcards of old Chinatown, and this is 1960, and you can just see it's just awash with neon glow. And only 5 years later, that much neon was removed in 5 years. And so it's kind of a miracle that somehow that kind of development just stopped, and we really have the cluster of very old neon signs. I'll just go back so you can see that again. What a dramatic difference. And here's another old sign. We're going to show the movie Lady from Shanghai, if you guys can stick around, and that was filmed on location in the 40s. And this gives you an idea of the beautiful sky signs and how picturesque. And of course, Chinatown was built this way to attract tourists, and so that it would never be torn down, because all of the buildings don't look like buildings in China, they look like pagodas. But that strategy actually worked, and Chinatown has never been seriously redeveloped. I always like to show this particular still from Lady from Shanghai, because you can see how close it is to see that trademark building. And that's Orson Welles just about to be chased down the street by Rita Hayworth.
Tough luck.
Tough luck. And this is the most reliable lit sign in Chinatown, the Buddha Lounge. And we went in one day and said, "Why does your sign always glow?" And the bartender says, "Because we learned how to fix it ourselves." It's so important to them. And so usually when a neon sign goes out, it's the transformer, something with electricity. It's usually not the tubes. That usually kind of happens after a hailstorm or a kid with a basketball comes by. Avery showed you the Golden Star, and this is, I think, just an unbelievable treasure and a miracle that it's still here. The Golden Star Radio Hour was the first Chinese language radio station in North America, and a couple broadcast from the basement of their appliance shop, and the sign is still there on the side of the building. And Al went digging and found a picture of Mary Chintong and her orchestra reading the news. And I'll just go back and say that my imagination insists that the radiating star glowed while they were broadcasting. I just think it just had to be like that. We've had two really beautiful signs. We've seen them be restored and illuminated this year. This is the Great Star Theater, and it was restored by John Law, who has restored many beautiful neon signs, and he's also part of the Two Benders episode that Avery recorded. And then also Sam Woe's restaurant, they got permission to move their neon sign to their new location, and they celebrated by having all of the neon restored, and it's glowing on Clay Street now.
Yeah, they got approval from the San Francisco Planning Department to do that, so that's very encouraging to see that kind of cooperation with the city.
And we are so happy to have some planning department folks here today, so we thank them for coming. Now, this next one's going to hurt a little. This is the Jinwall hardware store in Chinatown. It's got that beautiful patina and the painting along the side. And Al did a little research and found out that the people who owned Jinwall were some of the people that would absolutely take in immigrants and give them a job and a place to live, and that you can actually find references to the Jinwall hardware at the immigration station at Angel Island in the haikus that were carved into the wall there. And so this really should have gone to a museum or stayed as is or become an integral part of that neighborhood, and instead somebody got a little too much paint, and when they painted the building, completely painted over the sign. So these are the kinds of situations that we like to bring attention to, because these signs are meaningful. We do put meaning onto them, and the longer we have them, the more meaning they encompass. And even if the business changes, that doesn't mean the stories that are associated with that place and that sign are no longer significant and aren't embedded into that sign. Okay, so Al's going to tell you about the Tenderloin.
All right. There's also a large concentration of neon in the Tenderloin neighborhood, and some of it, you may remember the gangway on Larkin Street. It's still there. That's what it used to look like. And this photo was made by our friend Mark Caritas, who is here today. We're really glad that he had the foresight to do this, because he probably took this photo in the late 70s. Because today, that's what the gangway looks like. So it could still be preserved. People in the sign business will tell you that as long as you've got the tin can, you've got something to work with. But it would take a considerable amount of work to get this back.
And because Mark took the photo, we know how gorgeous it used to look, and it could be recreated.
Okay. And then we have the nightcap on O'Farrell Street. For years, referred to as the Knit, because that was the only part of the sign that lit up. Some of you may remember it used to be called Lambo's Nightcap. I was too young to go in back then. That's how old it is. And it's been restored by the new owners. The old owner, unfortunately, lost their lease, were forced out of the business. But the new owners, to their credit, understood the value of their sign and the value the sign had for the neighborhood, the iconic meaning that it represents for that neighborhood. So they had it restored, and they're extremely proud of this sign. And then you have another recent restoration, the Lafayette coffee shop. Another instance where the tenant lost their lease, but the new building owners actually had the sign restored, and we contacted them. First of all, the sign wasn't lighting up. We'd been tipped off that it had been repaired, so Randall sent an email to the new owner, and he wrote back and said, if you come down tonight, I'll make sure that sign is on. So it's because of the owner that we got a photograph of the sign. It's in the exhibition upstairs, and they did a really nice job on it. And here we have the Essex Hotel, which is also on Larkin and O'Farrell. And the Essex and the Senator Hotel, the neon restoration was done by the San Francisco Community Housing Project. We're going to talk a little more about that type of thing in a second here. The Heartland Hotel was restored by the Tenderloin Housing Clinic. The Tenderloin Housing Clinic is directed by a man named Randy Shaw. Randy is a political activist, a housing activist, and an author. He's written a number of books, mostly on activism, but his most recent book is a history of the Tenderloin. It's called The Tenderloin: Sex, Crime, and Repression in the Heart of San Francisco. It's a really good book. I highly recommend it. So anyway, Randy's group has done the Heartland. They've done the Jefferson Hotel. They did the Verona, which is across the street from the Tenderloin Museum. I don't know if I mentioned that Randy's also the director of the Tenderloin Museum. And they have applications in with the city to restore 2 or 3 more signs as we speak. They've also restored the Boyd Hotel, so the Kinney Hotel, and a few others. So Randy told us that his experience with after these restorations are done is that the tenants, the residents of the hotels, really love the work. It really gives them a lot of place of pride and sense of pride in where they live. And he said another thing that's happened is that other business owners in the Tenderloin that have neon signs on their buildings are really considering having their signs restored if it's possible, because they see the effect it has on the neighborhood.
And that effect is the pride of place. Also, just having those signs lit up at night creates a more safe environment. So it's been a real win-win for the Tenderloin. You want me to do this?
Sure.
Okay. All right. We just have to thank the San Francisco Neighborhood Theater Association for saving these 3 buildings and these 3 signs. The Balboa and the Vogue are are great rep houses that are actual theaters. The bridge, I think they're turning into a baseball academy, but that bridge neon is being restored. And without that association, all of these theaters would have been bulldozed. And we're so lucky to have this new mission restored also by the Alamo Drafthouse. This sign is so beautiful and designed by Timothy Pfluger, and they restored it to the last color. They scraped the inside of the tubes that were still hanging on so that it could find this green. And you can see this green neon from almost any other hill in San Francisco. I bet you could see it from space. I bet there's a NASA picture somewhere you could see that.
NASA has photos.
Yeah, exactly. And the relighting of the sign and the opening theater has just completely revitalized that particular neighborhood. And in San Francisco, there's one theater left that hasn't relit their signs, and it's the Golden Gate. And it's a wonder that they haven't, because this could really become, and it used to be an iconic sign to represent San Francisco. It's a big sign. It's as big as the new mission, but it would bring so much vitality and safety and pride to that part of that neighborhood. And I don't know if you noticed in the pre-show, and we'll show it again at the intermission, of the trip down Market Street. If you just look really carefully, you can see the Golden Gate. It goes by in a flash, but you can see it used to be red and blue and green. It was really colorful and beautiful, so we know what that sign used to look like. Another great illumination is the Quiet Through Tunnel sign, and this is a much beloved sign that was put there when suddenly cars were allowed to go through the tunnel instead of streetcars. And this sign was dark for decades, and we came around the corner one day and we saw the city of San Francisco had restored in argon tubes the Quiet Through Tunnel. So we feel like that's just a great trend center for other signs that don't necessarily advertise things, but talk to us.
And this sign was restored by the Department of Public Works.
Yeah. Another favorite is the View Alcatraz, which again talks to us. And I love the typography of this, how it gets smaller as the view takes you in a particular direction. And this sign was just unloved and uncared for, and still, though, a photo op for tourists. And right before we were about to print the book, Al had a few phone calls and found that they had been restored. Actually, I think it's been replicated, and it was glowing, so we were able to get a glowing version of this.
We always like to say that we don't know of any other city in America that's as proud of its penitentiary as San Francisco is. Because that sign actually existed while the penitentiary was still in operation. So,
another neon sign that talks to us, that this is dear to my heart, is the neon clock on the Golden Gate Bridge. And this had disappeared for months with no word from Caltrans what happened to it, and then miraculously it reappeared, restored. It's Art Deco clock from the 30s. And we think it's kind of a cool coincidence that over 30 important signs have been restored since we published the book. So we think that's kind of a cool thing. Another one that's just recently restored, and this was done by Jim Rizzo of Neon Works. He worked with Shauna on restoring the Castro Theater marquee, and this is the Saratoga, which is just open on Post and Larkin. That sign always used to say drugs, and that's in fact what you could get on the corner there.
Through in the 90s.
Yeah. So again, this kind of lights up that neighborhood. Beep's Burger, an old favorite, was bought by a student who used to go there as a student from SF State, and she had the sign restored. Shauna Peterson did the blinking jet, and you can get a really good, high-quality burger there. And then we always were going to have this as the cover of the book before we decided on the Verdi, because it is such a great cheer. And for so long, it just said ha on one side and ra on the other. And so we were so thrilled when we came around the corner on Geary Street and saw that it had been restored all the way up to the pink martini glass. And what is it with martini and cocktail glasses in San Francisco? It just seems to be something that you see everywhere, and there must have been some kind of permitting or code that you could only have a martini glass that was so high, and then the 500 Club happened, which is 2 stories high.
And you know, the Howrah is actually named for the 2 original owners, Harry and Ralph. And I think Harry was an ex-boxer and Ralph was a fireman.
Okay. All right, so we're running a little over, so I'm going to go here a little quickly. This is just my thing about neon signs. Why do we care about them so much? Because really what they mean is neighborhood. You almost never see a big neon sign, new or even old, for a big corporation. It really represents mom and pop places. Okay, maybe there's the Coca-Cola sign, we've got the big Safeway sign, but in general, it's a local place owned by a family, and it really is a place where we come together in our neighborhood. And that might be to dine and dance, like the Verde Club. It's over 100 years old now. It's where we go to, when we go out to the movies, a neighborhood place like at the Roxy. Doc's Clock, that's where we go to get our martinis. Doc's Clock is moving, and we've heard there's a good chance the sign will go with it. It's where we go to buy ravioli. This is a hardwired sign in the Little City Meats in North Beach that never turns off. There's no switch. It's where we go to eat fish dinners, and the number 9, we put that for this event because this is the 9th book talk that we've done this year, and we've done book talks for this Exploratorium, for the architects, for graphic designers, for historians, for business people. Neon just hits on a lot of levels. The Doughnut Sign on Chestnut Street is where everybody used to go and get their donuts, and when the new owners took over, they decided, even though they were selling teriyaki, that they would keep the sign and sell donuts also. This is a beautiful Art Deco sign by Wright, which is now like the mecca for all foodies in the Mission. And yet the family has kept this business and this beautiful historic backlit stainless steel neon sign. It's quite unusual.
That sign's been there since 1949.
And neon signs are the new stained glass in the 50s. And this sign still glows when you come off the freeway. It's right there on Gulf Street, big as life. And even where we park our cars, and this beautiful Art Deco sign with the G turning into the arrow, it's just so elegant and beautiful. And the last slide I want to show is the Britax sign, which just means Union Square to so many people. Now, you may have heard that the building sold, and the family would like to stay there, and the business would like to stay. They're going to have a vote on Monday whether or not it will get legacy business status. And if you voted for Prop J, that's what you voted for businesses to get that status, and so that they can get funding to keep their employees and to keep the business going. But there's no real provision that the sign would stay also. And so if they have to move, we want to make sure that the sign stays with them or stays intact. So we just have a little action. If you want to do a post-it vote, we've got a table in the back of the auditorium, and all you need is write is, I love the Britex neon sign, whatever you want to write, and we're going to post those on Sunday so that we can take pictures and videos, and that can be shown for the vote in City Hall on Monday.
They're going to be posted on the Britex windows.
On the windows. And we've been invited by Britex to do that. So, last but not least, we told you how grateful we were to Nikki Wermeister for having us. This is her Uncle Bill. And he's walking down Market Street as a young man. And these are the kind of photos that we need to do our work to save neon signs. And what's next for us, we want to start an archive online of these kinds of photos and link all the other photos in the library's archive and the SFMTA archive and the Internet archive. And I think you saw the Prelinger tape when we did the pre-show. And so if you have or you know anybody who has a family photo like this that will help us date a neon sign or show what signs used to live in neighborhoods, we want to start collecting these. And so we can create an archive and keep these stories and these all the meaning that we put onto these signs, and these family photos is a great way to put that meaning on to there. If you RSVP'd via Eventbrite, then we have your email, and we'll contact you about this, and you have a chance to opt out. But if you didn't RSVP, please sign our email list if you want to hear more about anything neon in San Francisco. We send updates about every 2 months, and we'd love to stay in touch. So I think we're going to do the break and show the historic clips, and come back and show you Lady from Shanghai. And should we do Neon Noir?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we're going to close with a little 5-minute piece, and this is sort of reiterating what Avery said, which is neon starts out in its life as being elegant and full of promise and allure. And then as cities deteriorated, it started to represent foreboding, warning, desolation, and in this little video, actually full-on murder and mayhem, and ends with a little bit of hope. And after we did the book, Al needed an obsessive task, so he went through every film noir he could find to find a scene of neon, and we strung it all together, and here it is.
We cut 3 minutes off of it.